Hey everyone, today we're going to go ahead and get started on the bow back version of the Skyler pattern. First, you want to take your two bow pieces and place them right sides together. Sew along the top and the bottom of the bow using your standard 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Be sure to use a stretch stitch such as the triple stretch stitch, a lightning bolt, or your serger, or your seam could bust open eventually after a couple wears and end up with little holes. Once you have them sewn, go ahead and turn your bodice or your bow piece right side out and grab your bodkin if you have one. I love using that little ballpoint end to push out all the seams. With knits, sometimes the fabric gets kind of sucked in and that helps push it all out. Go ahead and give it a press. Go ahead and grab your front bodice pieces, your main and your lining, and place them right sides together. Using a stretch stitch, go ahead and sew along the neckline, then clip your curves, being careful not to clip any of your stitches. If you do, run it back through your machine so you don't end up with any holes. Then you can go ahead and flip your front bodice piece right side out. Let's head over to our iron. I like to press everything as I go. I feel it creates a more professional looking garment. So go ahead and press your neckline, being sure your lining piece is all the way to the back, and press. Now you can go ahead and take your bow piece, and if you have a certain side that you really like, choose that one and place it right sides together with your main back bodice piece on the right side. Measure down 1.5 inches from the top of the bodice and pin in place. You can also use a friction pin if you would like to go ahead and mark your bodice, but I'm going to show you a little tip that I'm going to use after I pin it. Make sure it's on there nice and straight. If not, it will look a little wonky and have a little ripple in it. So go ahead and pin. Once you have that side pinned, you can take the other side of the bodice and flip it over and use where the bow is and mark that side so that side is ready for the next step, or in a few steps from now. Once again, you can use a friction pen or some sort of fabric pen to mark those points as well. Then you're going to take your lining piece and lay it on top of the back bodice main piece, right sides together. Get everything all lined up nice and pretty, especially the square back points. You want those to line up nice. You can put a few pins in there to hold it. Okay, now we're going to sew from the top of the shoulder seam down and across the back about 3/4 of the way. You can do a half of the way. I find it's a little easier if you continue to sew a little bit farther along. Here comes the fun part. We are now going to fold our bodice in half by taking the side with the bow and flipping it under the other side. So the side that does not have a bow should be on top, your main and your lining fabrics. Take your lining and flip it down. Take your bow and flip it over and match it to the points that we marked earlier. And you want to pin only through the main bodice piece at this point. Be sure that your bow is aligned with the back bodice edge. You do not want it to be crooked or a little wonky, and be sure that it's straight with the other side. If not, then your bow will look a little crooked. Take your lining, flip it back up, and you can go to your sewing machine and sew from the shoulder down all the way and then across the back to where you finished sewing last time. Be sure you're using a triple stretch stitch or some sort of stretch stitch so you don't have any pop stitches and holes later on. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get ready to turn our bodice right side out, but before we can do that, we have these corners that need to be clipped. If they are not clipped, when you turn it right side out, it will be a little bit more rounded and it will pull in those areas. So just give a little snip in each corner, being sure that you don't clip any stitches. Once you've completed that, you can take your lining and kind of flip it around, or take your main and pull it out. A couple shakes here and there always helps. Turn it right side out, and once you have that nice and aligned, you can take your bodkin, my favorite tool, as I've mentioned many times before. That little ballpoint edge works great for pushing out any seams. With knit fabrics, knit fabrics kind of get sucked into the seams a little bit. So if you don't push them out, It might end up a little wonky, or your main fabric might end up more on the lining or vice versa. So get that bodkin in there, push those seams out, and give the back bodice a really good press. Okay, now we have our front and back bodice pieces right side out, nicely pressed, and the necklines on both have been sewn. The first thing that we need to do is take our lining pieces and flip them towards the center of your bodice. And you'll do this on both sides of your shoulder seams. So as you can see here, I have the lining completely separated. Repeat that with the other side. And you'll also do the same thing on your back bodice pieces. Take your linings and flip them towards the center so you can see the full set of your shoulder seams, the main and the lining. Okay, we are going to take our back bodice and flip it directly on top of our front bodice, right sides together. You'll notice your main fabrics will match up and your lining fabrics will match up along the shoulder seams. Go ahead and match those up. I highly recommend pinning this area just to make sure it doesn't shift while sewing. Pin it on both sides. Take it over to your sewing machine and sew along the entire shoulder seam through the main fabrics and the lining, and you'll do that on both sides. You can now turn your bodice right side out. If you are doing the tank top method, you can leave the Skyler Sew Along section of the YouTube channel and go check out our how to do the burrito roll method in our videos. If you're adding sleeves, you will continue on in the Skyler Sew Along on the next day. Thank you for watching our video tutorial on how to add the bow to the back of the Skyler pattern. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Simple Life Patterns.